So once we've now discussed what trade publishing is, you guys are aware of the pest factors and everything that influences trade publishing. I'd like to now talk about, the way we distribute trade books, because it's quite important to understand what bookselling is. It's all fair and well if you come up with a great idea and you publish a book, but the most important factor actually is that you need to sell these books and market these books in order for your target audience to really see these books and interact with these books. So here are just a few examples of typical, merchandise that are used, or display kind of devices that they use to attract your attention, because you guys know once you walk into a bookstore there are so many books, so they find ways and means of attracting your attention. Look at the one on the left hand side, Wilbur Smith. That is that's a well-known author, but look out with repetition and with the covers and with that little box that they have, they immediately it will draw your attention. It says the legendary best-selling author. On the right hand side you have your typical Mills and Boon kind of little books. Look at the branding on the top, back with a passion, Mills and Boon, and then all their little books on it as well. It would immediately draw your attention. So booksellers usually also use all kinds of marketing devices and ways and display techniques to draw the customer's attention in order to get them to buy books. Call to action is what we call it. Right, so when you're a bookseller, remember now that when you guys work in publishing, you can basically work in any of the different fields within the publishing value chain. So you can either be a commissioning editor, where you come up with ideas and work with a manuscript, an editor that fixes the manuscript, a production person that works with the printing and the specifications and the typesetting, or are you going to be the person who is doing the marketing and the selling, or the distribution side? So you can even be a great bookstore manager, open your cool new bookstore, and then you're also part of the publishing world. But most important is you always remember what we always say, the 4 golden rules. I don't know if I've ever told you this, and if I have, great. If not, you will still hear it up until third year. The first one is know your audience. That is the first golden rule. Always know your audience. The second rule is managing expectations. The third rule is under promise and over deliver. And the fourth one is feedback. But we'll go through them as the year progresses, the years progress. So the first thing to me is very important, know your audience. You are selling to the customer. Now think out of, it can either be a bookseller, like having a bookstore, or it can be out of the perspective of a publishing house that's selling directly from their online shop, right? But know that you are going to sell to the customer. So you need to know what their wants and their needs are. You need to know their demographics and their social circumstances. Demographics are your age, race, language, income group, education level, all those kinds of factors that make up that little target audience of yours, that sample out of the bigger population that you are basically aiming your books towards. So know their demographics and their social circumstances. Something that we've mentioned previously as well. Know whether they're above the poverty line or below the poverty line. Know whether there are huge unemployment rates in your area. Know if it's quite an affluent business hub, maybe Sandton. But know the social circumstances as well, because the kind of books that you will keep in your store and will sell would actually have to link up with the kind of customers that you have in your area. You cannot now have coffee table, highly expensive, sophisticated books if you are living in a rural area where there are basically almost no bookstores or no culture of reading, etc., etc. You have to target your marketing efforts. Otherwise, you are going to waste money, you're going to waste time. So if you know your audience, you're going to know how I need to market it. Do I need a display? Do I need a window display? Do I need to have book events? Am I sending out newsletters, etc., etc.? Now, you need to know that publishers, the trade publishers, work very closely with booksellers. So it's, I don't know if you guys ever thought about this, but once your book has been printed, right? Now it comes from the printer. Where does it go? Does it go directly back to the publisher because they're selling directly, or is it actually then transported to a distribution house or a warehouse, or is it actually distributed directly to certain booksellers? It depends on the company that you work for and also the size of the company. So a bigger company like Penguin Random House would have their own warehousing system, or use, some other kind of distributor that distribute all their loads and loads of books to all the different bookstores. So you select the bookstores also beforehand to know that my kind of books will go into this and this and this bookstore. So you have a list of the bookstores that you send your books to. Or then you have a distributor who basically manages the process for you. But once again, once your books are actually ready, available and ready from the printer, you also need to decide what kind of promotion am I going to do. It's not that now it's out of your hands. You as a publisher always need to keep close ties with your booksellers and salespeople to know where your books are actually selling, whether they're selling, where is there higher demand, etc., etc. So, you can use intermediaries. Those are the ones that I just mentioned, like a distributor or an agent or a representative, and not sell directly. But these days we have like a combination where publishers are actually doing a lot of the sales themselves online, as well as have a few books in bookstores as well. It depends once again on the company, the kind of books that you sell, etc. So you have booksellers and you have distributors. So understand, booksellers are the ones who have the bookshops, right? Whether online or whether brick and mortar shops, those are the booksellers. The distributors is like an intermediary. They are basically the people who stores or warehouses all your titles, and they handle the the invoicing, the couriers, the sending out of it, tracking the sales, and then obviously whatever they make, they will pay over to the publishing house. So they do that, all of those kind of administrative details on behalf of the publisher. But now, due to technology, as I said, there was, a lot of new channels have opened up for publishers where now they can actually do a lot of direct selling if they have like an e-commerce system available on the back end that they can facilitate this. So this has actually brought about a lot of new business models, whereas in the olden days you would have your book publisher and then your book seller, and that would be that. Whereas the book publisher wouldn't necessarily get involved with the book selling duties. Now the lines have become a little bit blurred. We've developed new business models, as I said, where there's almost a combination where you do a little bit of sales online, you have Takealot, possibly also have Amazon, but then also have your distributor taking care of the book sales. The bookstore sales. So it depends once again on the company and what you'd like to do, but just understand that there are various ways of selling books and business models. Now, how do you move your titles? So if you think about a bookstore, next time you go into a bookstore, just think about this. Shelf life. It's what we call how long does a book actually stay on the shelf? Exactly what it says, a shelf life, right? And it is supposed to move relatively quickly. The turnaround time for a book on a shelf needs to be quite fast. Otherwise, what happens? That just means your book is sitting on the shelf and it is not selling. And that becomes a problem because every time your bookseller gets a new title, there's no space because now your book is still on the shelf and it is not selling. So, it's important that your book is actually selling so that they can replenish the stock or put new titles in that space, etc., etc. So books with a long shelf life. Now, it can be both things. It can either be bad in the fact that it's not selling. A book with a long shelf life can also be like a backlist title, meaning that this book is selling steadily for a long period of time. So every time it goes out of print, you reprint and it still sells and it still sells. So it has a long shelf life. Turnaround time is what I explained exactly to you guys now. Now, front list titles, you have a front list and a back list. I don't know if you guys can remember in a mid list. But your front list basically are those new books. Those are the ones that have been published within 6 months and of the year. And they're new. That's your new titles, right? And that's the ones that you want to get into the heads and you want to, of your consumers, and you want to grab attention and you want them to buy these kind of books because they're in the introduction, they're being introduced to your consumers. So your front list titles usually need more space on the shelves because those are the ones that need more attention, right? So that's also later on your front list title maybe becomes a backlist title. We have a lot of international competition, as we've mentioned before, and also on the shelves of your bookstores. They need to stock what people are buying. They can't just stock South African titles because they know people will be asking for the UK Harry Potter or for whatever. So you also need to, as a bookseller, you need to also balance your shelves and make sure that there's a equal distribution of titles. although we don't always see that. It's kind of dominated by international books. And then seasonality. Seasonality refers to seasons, obviously, but not just like winter, summer, spring. It can also mean a season of political unrest. It can mean a season like COVID, health issues, health awareness, all those kinds of things. And when there is a certain season for a book, you obviously promote it. So say, for example, it's Heritage Day, then you will always, put your cookbooks and your braai books and Jan Braai and whoever always, on the front of the shelf, or really do a nice display or something in your bookstore because you tie it in with that season, or Mother's Day or something like that. Christmas, obviously, you always have these displays of Christmas lists and best Christmas pies and cookbooks with Christmas recipes and how to make Christmas decorations. So that's what seasonality refers to, all right?